To protect my family members, some facts around the story will be changed, but the location is going to stay the same. Back in 1991, my grandma B was a Mexican-American, single mother, an extremely successful realtor in the Bay Area, and owned a home in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in San Jose. What I am about to tell you may sound like something straight out of a horror movie, but has been corroborated by multiple unbiased witnesses who were present that night, causing me to never forget and constantly be haunted by this story. While my grandma B's children, my father, Tim, 2 aunts, Ashley and Alicia, and uncle, Shane, were in their later teen years, my grandmother hired a maid named Elva to help around the house with cleaning. By all accounts, Elva was hard-working and drop-dead gorgeous, with glowing tan skin, big brown eyes and beautiful hair that flowed to her waist. Elva came to California with her parents from a small town in Jalisco, Mexico as a young child. Both Elva's parents were workers in nearby agricultural farms. At 16 years old, Elva reached out to an ad my grandmother put in a newspaper for a maid and began working shortly after. Elva was with my grandmother for 10 years before everything happened and had went from being a weekly cleaner to a live-in maid. Elva looked up to my grandmother for her independence and how she came from nothing to being an extremely successful Latina realtor and owning a home in such a renowned majority white neighborhood. As the years passed and B's adult children began to move out and start their own lives, Elva remained by her side, maintaining the luxurious 5-bedroom home and absorbing everything she could about finding success in the realtor business. B and Elva became fairly close. B learned all about Elva's life and how her grandparents owned large lots of land in their hamlet, and how Elva's grandfather favored her Aunt Agnes over her mother, leaving her to inherit all the land, and Elva's grandparents passed away and divided nothing with Elva's mother. Using her newfound wealth, Agnes bought a large home 2 streets down from B's for herself and her charismatic husband Lee, using B as her realtor after being referred to her by Elva. Although Elva's mother wanted nothing to do with Agnes, Elva and her aunt maintained a relationship, having weekly visits and an occasional lunch. Agnes looked strikingly similar to Elva, which Lee never failed to point out, making her a very beautiful woman for her age. With B's children no longer living in the house, the workload lessened for Elva, leaving her more time for herself. Elva would finish her cleaning early and study with the help of B in the afternoons in hopes of obtaining her realtor license. B was anything but oblivious and was very aware of her surrounding, a trait she picked up in her years of being a single mother to 4 sneaky teenagers. B would notice Elva getting ready nightly and walking out to a dark vehicle very similar to the car that Agnes' husband Lee drove. Elva would return hours later and resort to her room. B was very suspicious of this but kept her thoughts to herself. That is, until Elva broke down to her month later about expecting a baby. B expressed her suspicion and questioned Elva about who the baby's father was, which Elva would not reveal. B allowed Elva to stay in her home throughout her pregnancy, and agreed to let her stay after so long as she continued with their agreed lists of duties to maintain the home, regardless of the gut-wrenching suspicions that her beautiful, hard-working maid was indeed having a full-on affair with her aunt's husband Lee. Elva delivered a beautiful baby boy who she doted over. B was stunned at what an excellent mother Elva had become virtually overnight and found joy in watching the young maid with her beautiful baby boy find solace in her home. The joy was short-lived when one day B was working on listings when the most blood-curdling scream she ever heard rocked through the home. She rushed out of her office to find Elva desperately trying to wake up her baby boy, hollering for B to call an ambulance. Ice-cold shock ran down B's spine as she fumbled the landline in her hand. Elva's baby boy died that day from SIDS. As the ambulance worked on the baby, B couldn't take her eyes off his blue lips. B tried to console Elva, but it was impossible. The next few days felt like months as darkness filled B's home. B would listen to Elva curse God daily and ask how he could take her baby. A month after the baby passed away, in an attempt to get Elva's mind off of everything, B offered to take her with her to her son Tim's home in Lake Tulloch for a family gathering. The drive up was uneventful for the most part, lots of silence aside from occasional comments from B's 20-year-old daughter Alicia and her friend Dee, who had come along as well, about how beautiful the ride was. All of B's children were at the gathering at her oldest son Tim's home, including Tim's wife Angie, their 2 daughters, as well B's daughter Ashley's 2 daughters. As darkness took over the sunny day, Elva remained withdrawn and silent, sitting in a chair gazing out a window in the corner of Tim and Angie's large living room. At one point B was looking for dollar bills to pass to her granddaughters and asked that Alicia's friend Dee go out to her car to grab her purse. Dee walked out the door and shivered as she wrapped her jean jacket around her, stepping into the cold air. She walked down the driveway and up to the car when she instantly froze. In the backseat of Bee's car was a baby. Blueness was creeping into his skin as the baby gasped for air. Dee screamed at the top of her lungs that there was a baby in the backseat of the car. In the blink of an eye she opened the door and the baby was gone. Shane was already running down the steps of the house by the time she turned her head. Simultaneously, a blood-curdling howl ripped through the house and out the front door. Inside the house, Elva was now standing staring directing at Bee. The room began to shake as windows rattled in their frame. Elva's eyes turned into a black haze as her face contorted and she began speaking. She kept repeating in a deep whisper that she wanted Bee and planned to take her with her. Tim's wife scooped up all the children and ran to a back room, stacking furniture up against the door. Bee's children all ran towards Elva as she grabbed a marble coffee table that took 3 men to move into the home and threw it across the room effortlessly. Tim and Shane grabbed Elva by the arms, trying to restrain her as she held her gaze on Bee. Alicia slapped Elva across the face in an attempt to snap her out of it, when all of a sudden her eyes rolled to the back of her head and she collapsed. Bee's sons did everything they could to revive her and continued CPR until an ambulance arrived. Elva died 3 days later in the hospital. After that day, everything in my grandmother's life began to go downhill. Her successful days as a realtor came to an end and she was no longer able to obtain or hold clients. The once beautiful home was filled with an undeniable evil presence that everyone who entered noticed. Doors would open and close on their own, things would go missing, everyone who slept in the home felt as if they were being watched, and late at night you would hear the baby's cries rip through the house. My grandmother ended up losing her home as weird events continued to plague her life. To this day my grandmother will not speak about the events that took place that day. I still wonder about my grandmother's home and the evilness that was housed within, conceived from a mother's grief in losing her child. I wonder if the people who own the home now experience even a fraction of the pure terror that house brought to my family for decades. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe.